Buying a property can be a really big event in life. It can be scary, it can be uncertain, it can be worrying. And for a lot of people, it can be quite stressful. Whereas for other people, they glide through the process, not a worry in the world, and they just take action. And I've worked with lots of buyers and I've seen what works and what doesn't. And I certainly know what it takes to have success when it comes to property and investing. So in today's episode, I want to spend some time talking about mindset, because I think this is one of the three critical pillars for success in property and investing. So today's episode, I'm going to unpack the different stages of the buying and the investing process, and then break it down with some of the observations that I've made with myself as a buyer, but also with people that I've worked with. And then hopefully with this information, you can take on board and make some observations yourself that perhaps you can look at to potentially have better success in your journey when it comes to property and investing. So in case you don't know me, my name is Steve Williams and I'm the founder of W Property Advisory, and I've helped tons of people across the country get into the property market and start getting ahead. So what actually is mindset? Well, mindset is the ideas, the beliefs, the thoughts that we have as an individual towards ourselves, to people around us, and also to the world and any given topic. And it can come from our childhood. It can come from the things that we've learned along the way. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's fixed. Things can change over time. And there's definitely ways you can work on your mindset. In my links below, there's actually a quiz you can do, and we actually look at your mindset. So if you're wanting to see where you're at, you can do that. But one of the things we've noticed from people who have completed the quiz, there's definitely a lot of work people can do on their mindset. And I think some of the biggest things that I see with people is that they spin their wheels and they just don't take any action at all. And it's the process of analysis paralysis. And some personality types are definitely more prone to this. The more analytical types, or the procrastinators, or the people who are perfectionist and they want to get everything right. Sometimes it can hold them back from literally doing anything, and therefore getting ahead is seemingly in the far distance. It's something that's going to happen out there, or maybe not at all. Now let's talk about the pre-purchase stage. Some people, what they do is they go get a loan and then they start looking for property, and they've got an idea in their head of what they want. And it's, they're just going out and they're doing ad hoc decisions and off they go. And often these are the people who actually get their foot into the market reasonably quickly. And then there's the people on the other side of the spectrum who there's a little bit more analytical. As I said, they're looking at all the details and they're wanting to get things right. And therefore they delay decisions, they don't make decisions at all, and therefore they're missing out on potentially getting their foot into the market. And this can be really, really costly. So what would I say to someone if you're on that, analytical side? Well, definitely firstly observe yourself. And I think shining a mirror in your face and being like, that's who I am. And if this resonates with you, maybe it's time to start looking at what's actually holding you back from buying property. Because if you've got your deposit, if you know what your strategy is or roughly what you're wanting to buy, well, then mindset's the thing holding you back. And maybe you're distracting yourself with other things like work, family, friends, maybe even travel. So you really need to think, okay, what do I actually want? If you want to buy a property, well, you need to set yourself a firm goal and then go for it. The other part as well is that if you are the analytical type, then perhaps having someone to support you through the journey, because definitely property, there's things that matter and there's things that don't matter. And you need to work out what's actually most important, because there's never going to be a perfect property. So even if you need to get support from a professional or ask family or friends, maybe not too many, because then you're going to spin your wheels even more. But when it comes down to it, you really just have to make a decision. And sometimes making a decision is better than not making a decision. Of course, you want to do your due diligence and all your checks and listen to our other podcast episodes if you're wanting to make sure that you do get as much possible as right. But you need to make a decision. And I think decision making is absolutely critical when it comes to buying properties. So if you are a slow decision maker, then just acknowledge that. On the other hand, the people who make really quick decisions and they're confident and they see the bigger picture and they're not, creating dread or worry or concern if things don't go wrong, because they're more across all of the bigger picture And then therefore they're not focusing on that fine detail and getting caught up in things that are really quite insignificant. And the people that I've worked with, they are those big picture thinkers. They're not so much worried about the finer details. Often they very much get ahead, and they may not necessarily be experts in property or have much experience, but they're speaking with people who are in the know, and then they're just making a decision and they're going with it. And like in some markets, we've seen property prices grow by like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month. And if you delay by 3 to 6 months, it can be really, really costly. So number one, if you're in the pre-purchase stage and some of this resonates with you, that's what I recommend, is look at how you make decisions and what type of ways can you actually get the support to make a decision as easily as possible. The next aspect is the purchasing phase. You're out there, you're buying, and you're ready to place an offer on a property. And I tell you, across the country, it's very competitive in a lot of places. And people often, they go look at a property and then they consider putting an offer in, and maybe they have, and they're wanting to chase bargains, or they're just, I guess, really being unrealistic on what is actually within their price range and how they can actually get that deal done. And they're putting in offers that are just really not going to get accepted. I've seen this time and time again. And one of the big things I have to do is educate people on, okay, this is what a property is actually worth. And to get this deal done, this is what we're going to need to pay for it because of X, Y, Z. So if you are going in with that stingy kind of mindset, that's something you want to pay attention to, because in a lot of markets, it's not going to work. And if you're happy to keep missing out, that's fine. But there comes a time when you need to pay what a property is worth. If you're facing competition, if there is no competition, different story. Of course, we want to negotiate a better deal. But I see a lot of buyers, they're just going in with that, I guess, stingy scarcity mindset, and they're placing offers on properties, and they maybe place a few offers, they get frustrated, then they just give up, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to wait for the prices to come down. But really, that's not something that we've seen historically, maybe tiny little bits amounts, but waiting for a correction or a big drop is really probably not going to be the right strategy for you. So if you are out looking for properties, you really want to be realistic. I think that's the key thing, and have some patience, and also be curious and ask questions, get as much information as you can, because when you're asking these questions, you can get more insight rather than just going in with thinking that you know everything. And I have to say that a lot of people that are buying property, I've seen this out at inspections, maybe they've only bought one property in their life, but they think they're experts at buying property. But in reality, there's actually so much to buying property. There's heaps and heaps that even I'm learning every day, having bought so many properties for myself and for my clients. We're learning stuff every day. So ask questions and go in with a mindset of like, I actually don't know everything, and what more can I learn? Because that's where the gold is. The next part of this buying process is around the negotiation. And as I said, you want to put in realistic offers. But the other thing that I see where people fall down is if they're in a negotiation, it does get quite heated, right? And if you're facing competition with another party, you're dealing with the sales agent, and you really want to work with that sales agent. So not seeing them as the enemy or like they're trying to get money out of you. Yes, sometimes they can be. I mean, it is their job to get the maximum price for the seller. But what you want to do is really just like work with that agent to get that deal done, because sometimes like you are facing competition, and if it's a difference of placing a couple of extra $1,000 to get that deal done, are you better off buying that property rather than missing out? And then meanwhile, prices are going up, and then you have to wait maybe 1 or 2 months for the next property that meets your criteria to come up. So really work with people. I've worked with buyers before who they're like, oh, I'm not going with that. I'm not buying that. I don't want to play this game. Well, the fact is negotiation and property, it is a game, and you have to play the game. It's like a game of chess. You got to move your pieces in the right direction if you're going to get any results. But throwing your toys out of the bath is really not going to be the way to approach it. So be cool, calm, and collected. Work with all the parties and the stakeholders in the negotiation, and you're going to find you're going to have much better success. And then the final stage is the post-purchase. And for a lot of property investors, I do see this come up. And from time to time, properties, they have maintenance, right? You're buying a physical asset. which you're going to have to maintain over the years, especially if you're buying an older property. But even newer properties, they can require a little bit of work to them to keep them up to date. The thing is, property and investing, it's like a business, right? And you need to see it as like this separate thing over here in which you need to put your money into and support it to keep it running because you know it's going to have a long-term benefit. Then when expenses come up, rather than seeing it as like an awful bill like your electricity or your power bill, or water bill that you get at home, see it as an investment into that property, to the upkeep, to the looking after of your tenants. Because if you look after your tenants and create that good relationship, you're more likely going to have better tenants and a better result in the long run. So always keep a little bit of money aside and just be aware that you're going to have to put money into your property to upkeep it. And look, guys, I know it's hard. I mean, I remember the first property I bought, there was maintenance coming up. Tenants would send emails, or you'd hear from the property manager and they say, hey, like, we just have to get this little bit of work done. And especially when times are tough and you don't have a huge amount of money in your bank, it's not that nice forking out a couple of $1,000s for a new hot water system. But seeing it as an investment, and also there's a few little tax benefits there, but seeing that as an investment into your asset, it's going to just take away the pain a little bit. And it's going to hurt a bit less, and it means it's not going to ruin your day as much. So that's one key point post a purchase of your property. The other thing is for people who have a property already, they've bought their property and maybe it's done really well, and maybe people are considering to expand a portfolio. The difference between those people who succeed, in my opinion, and those who don't, who are the ones who they're courageous, they take action, they make decisions, and they're just like, look, if there's an opportunity, I'm going to go for it. And that kind of mindset is really going to get your head. I've seen people across the years who they sort of buy the property and then they're like, I get to relax now and I can enjoy this property. I feel like I'm in the market. And then there's others who are just like so bullish. They're like, look, I've had some growth in it, or I've got some more cash. Let's go buy another one. So depending on what your goals are, your risk appetite, and what you're wanting to do, if you're wanting to get ahead, then maybe taking action as soon as it's possible is going to give you a better result in the long run. And from my point of view, I bought my first property when I was 23 and then went on to buy a few others in my 20s. I kind of, I was busy. I worked full time, and it was difficult to kind of work full time and then try and enjoy your weekends, but also try and have these property plans and make decisions and take some action. But as soon as I knew there was a potential, I would go speak to a mortgage broker, speak to the property people, and really just get some, clarity on like, can I do it now? Should I wait? Because the sooner you can take action, the more you're able to achieve your goals in a faster way, rather than sitting back and then just waiting for things to happen. But definitely the people who take action, make decisions, get things done, the go-getters, essentially, they're going to do better. And if you want to get ahead, then maybe consider where you're at and whether you are being distracted by your day-to-day, or are you actually taking action? Are you making things happen? Because if you do have these big plans that you're wanting to achieve while sitting around and waiting and hoping, it's not going to get you there. All right, so I've covered mindset. What is mindset? Mindset at the 3 different stages. This is really just an introduction, but I really want to cover the most critical things when it comes to mindset. I'm going to do a more in-depth dive and bring in some more experts. So if this is something of interest, please subscribe to the podcast, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and also give us a comment as well. If you've got any questions, or share your stories of some of the pain you've had along the way and how you've had to adapt your mindset. And I think I just want to talk about this quote that I heard. Warren Buffett says, never invest in a business that you don't understand. And I think that's a really good mindset to have. If you're not quite sure how things work, take the time to learn it. Listen to this podcast, speak to experts, get out there, ask questions, or if you just want to shortcut the process, speak to a buyer's agent, whether it's us or someone else. Just find someone that can help you on the way, because certainly from my experience over the last 15 years in property, if I had have known what I know now 15 years ago, I would be in a very, very different situation. But, we can only do the best with what we know at the time. And as I mentioned, I do have a quiz. If you're wanting to see where your mindset is at, you can do the quiz below. It just takes 2 minutes and we're going to send you the results and also a few little freebies as well. We've got a cash flow forecast. So complete that one if you want to see where your mindset's at and what you might be able to do. If you have found this interesting, then you might want to explore some other videos on YouTube. There's a lot of people that I love to follow. Warren Buffett does a lot on investing mindset. You might want to look at the book Think and Grow Rich. It's a fantastic book and it dives into the mindset of the wealthy, because as you start to build your wealth, the mindset around money and what it means, it absolutely transforms. So start learning and see how you can grow your mindset, because if you have that growth mindset and continue to expand, your wealth over time is going to build. You're going to be more proactive and take more action and get better results. At the start, I did promise I'd tell you the 2 things that I think separate those who succeed and those who don't. And I've covered them already, but just to recap. Number 1 is those who don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. They're aware that they're that type of person, but they push through, they persevere, they make a decision, and they just step away from their mind to just move forward and make a decision. I think that is absolutely critical. I've caught myself before being stuck in that place. You just have to step forward and just do it. Then the other aspect is when you're wanting to expand a portfolio. And I think having a mindset of let's do this, let's go. If there's an opportunity, let's go for it. They're the type of people who are going to get ahead, because sitting around waiting, having someone else tell you what to do, it's not going to work. So please, if there's any advice, take those 2 items and it's going to really boost your mindset and get you much better results. It's been great having you here again today, and we've got another episode coming out next week. So do subscribe. Until next time, I'm Steve Williams. Let's Rentvest and get ahead together. All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs, and speak to a professional.